They say learning a new language changes your brain. What they don't tell you is, it changes your heart too. Hi, my name is Eva, and I want to share my journey with you. It's not just about learning English. It's about pushing through fear, self-doubt, and loneliness to finally find my voice. I wasn't born in the U.S., but now I live here. When I first came, I couldn't even ask for help at a grocery store. It was hard. Really hard. But I didn't give up. When I first arrived in the United States, I had this picture in my head, an image built from movies, books, and social media. It was full of sunshine, opportunity, and smiling people who always seemed to know what to say and how to say it. I thought I was ready. I thought I knew enough English to survive, maybe even thrive. But the moment I stepped off that plane and faced real American life, reality hit me harder than I ever expected. The first few weeks were like walking through fog. Everything was familiar in the way I'd seen on screen, but distant, like watching someone else live the life I wanted. I remember standing in a supermarket on my third day here, holding a basket with 3 items and feeling completely overwhelmed. The cashier said something I couldn't understand. It was fast, casual, probably just, "Hi, how are you?" Or, "Do you have a rewards card?" But I froze. My throat tightened. My face went red. I just nodded and whispered yes, even though I had no idea what I was agreeing to. I walked out of that store and cried in the parking lot. That was the first of many silent breakdowns. What made it worse was that English had never seemed like a problem back home. I had studied it in school. I got good grades. I could read novels, understand lyrics, and write emails. But none of that prepared me for the everyday American accent. The speed, the slang, the tiny jokes people throw into conversations. I'd listen to my coworkers talk about the weekend, and even though I heard every word, I couldn't make sense of it. "We hit the road Friday," someone said. I thought, why would you hit the road? Did something happen? I didn't know it meant they went on a trip. I smiled like I understood. Inside, I felt small. Every interaction became a source of anxiety. At a coffee shop, I'd practice my order in my head while waiting in line. "Hi, can I get a small vanilla latte, please?" But when it was my turn, panic took over. I'd mess up the words or say them so softly the barista had to ask me to repeat. That always felt like failure. Sometimes I'd just point to the menu. Other times, I walked away without ordering. And it wasn't just cafes, gas stations, public transport, doctor's offices, even fast food drive-thrus became emotional landmines. The fear of speaking wrong kept me silent. What hurt most wasn't just the language gap. It was the feeling of being invisible. I remember sitting on a bench in the park, watching a group of moms chatting while their kids played nearby. They laughed, shared snacks, called out to their kids in English so naturally. I wanted to join in, to smile and say, "Hi, I'm Eva," but the words stayed stuck in my throat. I felt like a ghost in my own life, present but disconnected. Even though I was surrounded by people, I'd never felt more alone. I tried apps. I downloaded every Learn English Fast program I could find. I watched YouTube videos with subtitles and listened to American podcasts. But no matter how much I studied, real conversations still terrified me. There's a big difference between learning English and living in English. And that's the part no one really prepares you for. One of the hardest moments came at work. I got a part-time job at a small grocery store stocking shelves. On my second week, a customer stopped me and asked, "Hey, do y'all carry almond milk?" It was such a simple question. But the way he said it, the way "do y'all" rolled off his tongue, made me hesitate. I knew what almond milk was, but do y'all? I'd never heard that in class. I stood there blank. He repeated the question. I panicked and said, I don't know, and walked away. Later, I found out y'all just means you all. I felt so stupid for not knowing. That night, I went home and searched y'all meaning on Google. Then I cried again. But despite how hopeless I felt, I also had this quiet, stubborn voice inside me that refused to give up. I didn't come all this way to stay afraid. I wanted to belong here. I wanted to walk into a store, order food, chat with people, and feel normal. I wanted to live, not just survive. That's when I started changing the way I learned. Instead of trying to be perfect, I started focusing on small victories. I told myself, okay, maybe you don't understand everything yet. But what can you understand? What can you say? I gave myself permission to fail. That was hard for me. I've always been the type to avoid mistakes. But with English, mistakes were part of the process. I had to stop fearing them. The truth is, being lost in everyday life taught me something school never did. That learning a language isn't just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about courage. It's about showing up over and over again, even when your voice shakes. It's about saying the wrong thing, getting corrected, and trying again the next day. No app can teach you that. Life does. And it was in those quiet, difficult moments that I started to build new habits. I began paying closer attention to how people around me spoke, the rhythm, the tone, the slang. I started mimicking them when I was alone. I'd go home, stand in front of the mirror, and repeat the phrases I'd heard at work. I'd pretend to order coffee or help a customer. I was still scared. But now I was taking action. One night, while cooking dinner, I left the TV on in the background. A kid's cartoon was playing. The voices were slow and clear. I noticed I could understand most of what they were saying. So I sat down, plate in hand, and watched. I laughed at the jokes. I even repeated the lines out loud, copying the voices. I felt ridiculous, but it felt good. It felt like something I could actually do. That became my new routine. And that leads me to the next part of my journey. How I started using cartoons and children's shows to practice English, and how that small step gave me a surprising boost of confidence. It started by accident. I was having one of those evenings where everything felt too heavy. My shift at the grocery store had been rough. I'd misunderstood a customer, again, and my manager had to step in and help. She was kind about it, but I still felt embarrassed. When I got home, I sat on the couch with a bowl of microwave, mac and cheese, and stared blankly at the TV. I wasn't even paying attention at first. The channel was already on, a local PBS station, and a cartoon was playing. Bright colors, silly voices, simple stories. It was a show meant for 5-year-olds. But something strange happened. I understood it. Like, really understood it. Not just the words, but the feelings behind the words. The characters were saying things like, "Let's go to the park!" And I feel sad when I lose my toy. It was so clear, so easy to follow. I didn't need subtitles. I didn't have to pause or Google anything. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel stupid. I didn't feel like English was this giant wall I could never climb. That cartoon, that silly little cartoon, made me feel capable. That night changed everything. The next morning, I woke up early and turned on the same channel. Another kid's show was playing. A cheerful puppet was brushing his teeth and singing about getting ready for the day. I sang along. I even repeated his little phrases, "brush up and down," and "nice and clean." It felt ridiculous. I was a grown woman repeating lines from a preschool show in my tiny kitchen while making toast. But I kept doing it, not because it made me smarter, but because it made me feel safe. Cartoons became my new classroom. Every day before work, I'd turn one on while getting dressed. I didn't try to analyze or take notes. I just watched and listened. After a while, I started repeating entire conversations out loud. At first, it felt weird talking to the TV, but after a few days, it started to feel natural. There was no pressure. No one was judging me. If I messed up a sentence, the TV didn't care. If I pronounced something wrong, no one corrected me with a sigh or a confused face. It was just me and the characters, practicing together. And that's how I discovered the power of talking to myself in English. At first, I stuck to the cartoons. I'd mimic the voices and facial expressions just for fun. I even tried to copy the silly dance moves or hand gestures they used. I know it sounds childish, but those shows are designed to teach. They use repetition, clear pronunciation, and simple sentence structure, exactly what I needed. And slowly they began rewiring my brain. I started dreaming in English. I started thinking in English. Soon I began expanding beyond the screen. I'd walk around my apartment and describe what I was doing in English. Now I'm washing the dishes. Time to fold the laundry. I'm tired, but I still need to cook. It felt a little crazy at first, like I was pretending to be a YouTuber narrating my life. But it worked. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. I stopped waiting for the perfect English moment and just started talking. And it wasn't just inside my home. I began whispering to myself in the grocery store, too. When I stocked the shelves at work, I'd mutter, "This goes on the top rack. Cereal is aisle 4. Where's the scanner?" I didn't care if people thought I was odd. I was training my brain and my mouth to work together. English stopped being this scary thing. I only used when I had to, and started becoming part of my everyday life. There was one cartoon I especially loved, a show called Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. It had this gentle, kind tone that reminded me of old storybooks. Each episode had a theme like try new things, or it's okay to feel sad. I remember one episode where Daniel Tiger was nervous about going to a new school. He sang a song that went, "When you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. I stood in front of my mirror and sang it with him. Not because I was mad, but because it helped me breathe. In a strange way, those shows gave me emotional support too. Moving to a new country and struggling with the language doesn't just affect your mind, it affects your heart. You start to doubt your worth. You feel like you're always one sentence away from embarrassment. But those gentle voices reminded me I was still learning, and that was okay. They helped me be kind to myself. Eventually, I started combining the cartoons with real-life tasks. If I was cooking, I'd narrate the steps like I was hosting a cooking show. Today we're making chicken stir-fry. First slice the peppers, then add some garlic. If I was walking to the store, I'd describe everything I saw out loud. There's a red car. That dog is barking. Oh, look, someone's jogging. Was it perfect? Of course not. But that wasn't the point. What I noticed over time was how my mouth started to move more easily. My tongue knew where to go. I didn't have to pause and translate words in my head. I could just speak. Even if it was simple, it flowed better. And something even bigger happened. I started to feel less afraid of speaking to other people. One weekend, while grocery shopping, a woman next to me dropped a can of soup. I picked it up and said, "Here you go." She smiled and said, "Thanks." It was a small moment, but I didn't hesitate. I didn't overthink. The words just came out. I walked out of that store feeling proud. For the first time, English wasn't something I feared. It was something I used naturally, casually, like a real part of me. It wasn't always smooth. Sometimes I'd forget words or say something silly. One time I told my coworker, "I'm going to the washing place," because I forgot the word laundromat. We laughed about it and she said, "That's a cute way to say it." That moment made me realize most Americans don't care if your English isn't perfect. They appreciate the effort. They listen to your meaning more than your grammar. That thought made me feel braver. As my confidence grew, I started exploring more media. I moved from cartoons to children's movies, then from movies to sitcoms. I'd watch episodes of Friends or The Office with subtitles at first. I'd pause the scenes and repeat the lines, trying to match the tone and rhythm. I wasn't just learning words. I was learning how Americans speak. The way they joke, the way they pause, the expressions they use. That's something textbooks never taught me. But the cartoons, those silly, colorful shows, will always have a special place in my heart. They were my safe zone when I felt overwhelmed. They gave me a bridge from fear to confidence. Without them, I don't know if I would have kept going. And now, looking back, I realize that the simple act of talking to my TV was the beginning of something much bigger. It taught me that learning English isn't about perfection. It's about participation. It's about showing up every day. Even if all you do is say, "Hi, I'm brushing my teeth like a cartoon tiger." It's about using what you have, where you are, and not letting shame keep you silent. That new habit, talking to myself, repeating out loud, building confidence alone, set the stage for the next step in my journey. I was finally ready to try something I had been terrified of for months. It was time to look in the mirror, speak to myself like I mattered, and practice real English face to face with the one person I trusted most, me. After weeks of watching cartoons and talking to the TV, something in me began to shift. I could feel the change, not just in how I spoke English, but in how I felt about myself. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel completely powerless. I was still nervous about talking to real people, sure, but the language no longer felt like a locked door with no key. I had found a crack in it. And now I wanted to push it open a little more. The turning point came late one night. I'd just finished watching an episode of Sesame Street, and I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. The mirror fogged up from the steam, and I wiped it clean. I looked at myself for a long second. There I was, tired eyes, hair pulled back, a worn t-shirt from Target, toothbrush still in hand, and I suddenly felt this weird pull, like I needed to say something out loud. Something real. Not a line from a show. Not a copied phrase. Just something. So I said it. Quietly at first. "Hi, my name is Eva." Then louder. "My name is Eva. I live in the United States now. I'm learning English." I looked myself in the eyes as I said it. It felt strange, almost like pretending to be someone else. But the more I said it, the more natural it felt. That night, standing barefoot on the cold bathroom tile, I discovered one of the most powerful tools I've ever used to improve my English, the mirror. I don't know why it worked so well. Maybe because it forced me to be present. Maybe because I could actually see myself speaking, catch my mouth as it formed the words, notice my expressions and body language. Or maybe it was because I had no audience, no pressure, no fear of looking stupid, just me and my reflection, just truth. The next morning I tried it again. Before heading to work, I stood in front of the mirror with my coffee mug in hand and said, "Good morning, Eva. How are you today?" And then I answered myself, out loud, like a total weirdo. "I'm okay. I didn't sleep much, but I'm trying." I laughed at myself, but I kept going. I turned the mirror into a stage, and I gave myself permission to speak. It became a routine. Every morning, every night, I carved out 5 minutes just to talk to myself in the mirror. Some days I'd practice small talk. "What do you do for work?" "Where are you from?" "Do you have any pets?" Other days I'd vent about my feelings. "I'm nervous about tomorrow." "I messed up today, but that's okay." I said whatever came to mind. No filter, no grammar check. Just honesty. And something magical began to happen. I started catching little things. How I pronounced certain words. How my face looked when I was confident. How it changed when I doubted myself. I began fixing my own mistakes. Don't say he do, say he does. Not I know understand. I say I don't understand. The mirror didn't judge me, but it showed me the truth, and that truth helped me grow. I also noticed how much my body language mattered. I used to slouch when I spoke English, like I was apologizing for taking up space. But now I made eye contact with myself. I stood taller, I smiled. Even my voice changed. It sounded stronger, more sure of itself. I wasn't just learning to speak English. I was learning to believe in myself. And then I started taking things further. I added emotions to my mirror practice. I'd say happy things in a cheerful tone. "I got the job." Or, "It's my birthday." Then I'd practice serious moments. "I'm sorry." "I need help." "I don't understand." And I'd even go deep and raw. "I'm scared." "I miss my family. I feel alone." That was the hardest part. Not the vocabulary, not the grammar, but allowing myself to feel what I really felt. To speak it, to own it. In English. One night I cried in front of the mirror. I had tried talking to someone at the laundromat earlier that day, and they didn't understand me. They kept saying, "What? Can you repeat that?" I tried 3 times, but I couldn't get the sentence right. I walked home, ashamed and quiet, and then I stood in my bathroom and cried. But after the tears, I looked myself in the eye and said, "You're still learning." And that's okay. Then I repeated the sentence I'd been trying to say all day, over and over, until it sounded right. That's what mirror practice taught me, that I could fail in public, but recover in private, that I could take broken sentences and turn them into tools for tomorrow. And it wasn't just about English anymore. Speaking to myself in the mirror helped me reconnect with who I was. I had lost so much of my identity when I moved to the US. I used to be confident. I used to laugh loudly, tell stories, make people feel welcome. But when I couldn't express myself in English, all of that disappeared. I became quiet, dull, invisible. But the mirror brought that woman back, one word at a time. After a while, I started recording myself. I'd use the voice memo app on my phone and record short diary entries in English. Just 1 or 2 minutes a day. Sometimes I'd describe what I did. Today I went to work. It was busy. A customer yelled at me. Other times I'd talk about my dreams. Someday I want to go to college. I want to travel to California. Listening back to those recordings was painful at first. I hated my accent, my pauses, my mistakes. But then, after a few weeks, I started to notice progress. The sentences were smoother. The words were clearer. My voice sounded like me. That gave me hope. I also began using sticky notes. I wrote down useful sentences and stuck them around my apartment, on the fridge, on the mirror, next to the light switch. Phrases like, "You're doing great," "Don't give up," How much does this cost? Where's the bathroom? Every time I passed one, I'd say it out loud. It turned my whole home into an English learning zone. Sometimes I'd even pretend I was having a real conversation. I'd imagine I was at the doctor's office or at a job interview. I'd ask the question, then answer it. Why do you want to work here? Well, I'm organized, responsible, and I enjoy helping people. It felt silly, but I knew it was helping me prepare for real life. And then one day, it happened. I was at a neighborhood potluck, invited by a woman from the book club I had just joined. That's a story I'll tell you soon. Someone asked me, "What do you do for fun?" And before I could panic, I just answered, calmly, confidently. I like watching movies and cooking new recipes. I even smiled and asked them the same question. The conversation flowed. And all those mirror talks, all those solo rehearsals, all that invisible work I'd done alone, it showed up right there, in real life. That moment proved to me that practice, even alone, is real practice. That private effort becomes public progress. That the mirror was more than glass. It was a gateway. I still talk to myself in the mirror, even now. Before job interviews, before phone calls, before big decisions. It keeps me grounded. It reminds me how far I've come. And how I got here, not with expensive tutors or fancy classes, but with a deep desire to learn. And a simple mirror in a quiet bathroom. And now that I'd found my voice in private, I was finally ready to test it in the real world. That's when I made the boldest move of all. I walked into a local library, saw a flyer for a book club, and heart-pounding decided to join. I was ready to speak English with real people, even if I was scared, even if I made mistakes, because now I believed I could. Joining the book club wasn't part of any plan. In fact, I had no plan beyond talking to myself in the mirror and whispering sentences while I cleaned my apartment. That was the level of safety I had built, private, predictable, and solitary. But something inside me had started to shift. After months of mirror practice, of watching kids' shows, and of repeating simple phrases out loud, I found myself craving something more. I didn't just want to practice English, I wanted to use it. In real conversations. With real people, even if my heart raced. Even if I got it wrong. The day it all started was cold and gray. I had gone to the public library to return a cookbook I had checked out. One full of easy American recipes I had been trying to follow. Cooking had become a small way to feel connected. Measuring cups, slow cookers, baking sheets. These were things that felt very American to me. After I dropped the book in the return bin, I stood near the bulletin board by the front entrance, just to take a break before walking back home. That's when I saw it, a bright yellow flyer with hand-drawn books and friendly writing. It said, "Book Club, all levels welcome. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. No pressure, just community and conversation." I stared at it for a full minute. My first thought was, no way. You're not ready. But then I read the part again. All levels welcome. And the words "no pressure" echoed in my mind like a soft invitation. My fingers trembled a little as I pulled the tab with the contact email. I didn't message them that day. I walked home instead, thinking about it over and over. My brain made a list of reasons why I shouldn't go. What if I can't keep up? What if they laugh? What if I freeze? But my heart had only one reason why I should. You're ready for more. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror. Like always, I practiced speaking, but this time I said something different. I said, "I want to go to the book club." Then again louder, "I will go to the book club." I didn't believe it yet, but I said it anyway. 2 days later, I emailed the contact from the flyer. Her name was Claire. She replied within an hour. Her message was warm and welcoming. "Hi, Ava. We'd love to have you. We're very relaxed. People just share what they liked about the book, or sometimes just talk about life. You can come and just listen if you want. No pressure at all." That phrase again, no pressure. It became a comfort blanket. Wednesday came too fast. I spent an hour trying to decide what to wear. I knew it didn't matter, but I wanted to feel like I belonged. I chose a soft blue sweater and jeans. I practiced a few sentences in the mirror. "Hi, I'm Eva. This is my first time. I'm excited to join." Then I left my apartment with a heart that felt too big for my chest. The library's community room was in the back, near the shelves of magazines and DVDs. As I walked toward it, I could hear laughter and soft chatter coming from inside. I almost turned around, but I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped in. There were about 12 people sitting in a loose circle of chairs. Some were young, some older, and one or two looked about my age. Claire, a woman with curly brown hair and red glasses, stood up and smiled. "Hi, you must be Eva. Come on in." Her voice was so kind that it made my nerves settle a little. She guided me to an empty seat and handed me a copy of the book they were discussing, The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I had never read it, but I recognized the cover from bookstore shelves. At first, I just listened. People took turns sharing their favorite parts. They didn't speak too fast. Claire would gently guide the conversation, asking questions like, "Did you notice how the author described the house?" Or, "What did you think about Lily's relationship with her father?" I didn't understand every detail, but I followed most of it. I smiled, nodded, and held the book in my lap like a safety blanket. Then Claire turned to me. "Ava, would you like to say anything? No pressure, only if you feel comfortable." My palms were sweating. I hadn't planned to speak, but something in me whispered, "Try." So I cleared my throat, and with a shaky voice, I said I didn't read the book yet, but I like listening to you all. Everyone is so kind. I paused, afraid I had said something wrong. But people smiled, and someone said, "We're glad you're here." Another woman added, "You'll love the book. It's beautifully written." That moment felt like sunlight. It warmed something inside me that had been cold for a long time. I left the meeting that night floating. I hadn't said much, but I had shown up. And that was enough. The next week, I came early. I had started reading the book, slowly with a dictionary nearby. I wrote down new words and practiced saying them aloud in the mirror. That Wednesday, I shared a sentence that I liked from the book. My voice still shook, but it was louder than before. The group listened. They encouraged me. One man even said, "You have a nice accent. It makes me pay attention more." And that was the first time I thought maybe, just maybe, my accent wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was part of my story. Week after week, I kept coming back. The library became a place of healing. The book club wasn't just about novels. It became a space where I could be myself. In English, with people who saw me not as a foreigner, but as a fellow reader, a human being. I made friends there. Real friends. One of them, Sarah, was a school teacher who offered to help me practice conversation. We'd meet at the local cafe on Sundays and talk over coffee. At first, it was simple stuff. What we did that week, what we thought about the book. But soon we were sharing deeper things. She told me about her divorce. I told her about my homesickness. We laughed. Sometimes we cried. And all of it was in English. Those conversations helped me let go of the fear I'd carried for so long, the fear that I wasn't enough, that I'd never be fluent, that people would always see me as other. I realized that communication is more than perfect grammar. It's connection, and I was finally making one. The book club became my bridge. Through it, I learned new vocabulary. Yes, but more importantly, I learned how to trust myself, how to speak even when I was nervous, how to listen with patience, how to be part of a group. Every session became another brick in the foundation of my confidence. Sometimes I still made mistakes. I once said library instead of library, and someone gently corrected me. Another time, I used the word funny when I meant strange, and we all had a laugh. But these mistakes didn't crush me like they used to. They became stepping stones. I even found myself helping others. A man from Colombia joined the club a few weeks after I did. He struggled with English, too. One night I sat next to him and whispered, "Don't worry, just try." And when he spoke, I smiled at him the same way Claire had smiled at me that first night. It felt like coming full circle. Eventually, I started speaking up more in other parts of my life, too. I asked questions at work. I ordered confidently at restaurants. I made small talk at the post office. And every time I did, I remembered those first baby steps in the mirror. Those cartoons, those whispers in my kitchen. They had led me here. Joining the book club was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It pushed me beyond the walls of my apartment and into a real living community. It helped me move from silence to speech, from fear to connection, and it prepared me for something even greater. Because after all that reading, listening, and speaking, I started to realize something powerful. I was no longer just learning English. I was living in it. I was thinking in English, dreaming in English, and yes, speaking in English with confidence. That's when I knew I had crossed a threshold, and I was finally ready for the last part of my journey. I used to think that fluency in English meant being perfect. Perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, perfect confidence. I had this picture in my mind of someone speaking without a single mistake, never hesitating, never pausing to find a word. That person always sounded smart, smooth, and natural. I wanted to be her. I thought that was the goal, to become someone who spoke flawless English. Someone who blended in so well no one would ever know she came from another country. But the truth is, perfection was never the goal. And it was never the answer. After joining the book club, I started putting myself out there more. I accepted invitations to birthday parties and neighborhood barbecues. I helped coworkers stock shelves during the morning rush and even spoke up during our team meetings. I wasn't just surviving in the United States anymore. I was beginning to live. I started to experience what people meant when they said, "Find your place." It wasn't a location. It was a feeling, and I was starting to feel it. Still, I made mistakes. I made lots of them. At one party, I told someone, "Your dog is very ugly," when I meant to say, "Your dog is very funny." Everyone laughed, including the owner, who thankfully had a great sense of humor. I was mortified, but they were kind. That moment stuck with me, not because I messed up, but because nobody cared. Nobody expected me to be perfect. Another time at work, I was helping a new customer and couldn't remember the word for receipt. I pointed to the paper in my hand and said, "This thing you get when you pay." The customer smiled and said, "Oh, the receipt?" I nodded. "Yes, that. The receipt." I could have walked away feeling embarrassed. But instead, I walked away thinking, I found another way to explain what I meant. And it worked. That was progress. I realized that English, like life, is full of messy, beautiful imperfections. And when I stopped trying to be perfect, I started making real progress. That mindset didn't come easily. I spent years tying my self-worth to how good my English sounded. If I got a compliment, I felt proud. If someone looked confused or corrected me, I felt like a failure. But little by little, that began to change. I remember one afternoon when I had coffee with Sarah, my friend from the book club. We sat at our usual spot by the window in a quiet cafe, sipping lattes and talking about work. At one point, I stumbled over a sentence. I said, "He don't like it," and immediately corrected myself. "Sorry, he doesn't like it." I looked at her, a little embarrassed, but she just smiled and said, "Ava, you don't have to apologize every time. Nobody talks perfectly, not even native speakers." That hit me like a wave. Nobody talks perfectly, not even native speakers. I started paying attention to how people around me spoke. Americans, people, born and raised in this country, and she was right. They paused. They used filler words like and you know. They said things like ain't, gonna, kinda, and even mixed up past and present tense when they were tired or distracted. And yet no one cared. Their message still came through. Their meaning mattered more than their wording. That realization freed me. For so long, I had tried to sound correct, thinking that was the only way people would respect me. But now I knew it was more important to be clear, honest, and real. One of the most powerful lessons came from a little boy. I was volunteering at the library's Storytime event, helping set up books and snacks. A 5-year-old boy walked up to me and said, "You talk funny." For a second, I didn't know what to say, but then I knelt down and smiled. "That's because I'm still learning," I said. "I didn't grow up speaking English." He looked at me, thoughtful, and replied, "That's cool. I'm learning to read." Then he showed me his book like it was a trophy. In that moment, we were the same. Both learning, both growing, both trying. And I thought, why did I ever feel ashamed? I started giving myself grace. I let go of the idea that I had to reach some magical point called fluency to be proud of myself. I stopped measuring my success by how many words I knew or how fast I could reply. Instead, I looked at the bigger picture. Could I order food without panic? Yes. Could I make small talk with neighbors? Yes. Could I speak up in a group, ask for help, and tell someone about my day? Yes. I had come so far, not because I was perfect, but because I kept showing up. I also realized that progress looks different every day. Some days I felt confident, like I could talk to anyone. Other days I felt tired, slow, and unsure. That didn't mean I was failing. It meant I was human. Learning English wasn't a straight line. It was a messy, twisting road with detours, wrong turns, and rest stops. But every step, even the slow ones, moved me forward. There were times I surprised myself, like when I helped a lost tourist find their way in the city, or when I comforted a coworker going through a tough time, offering words I didn't even know I knew. Those moments reminded me that I had become someone who could speak from the heart, someone who could connect, comfort, and contribute. And I began to see my journey as something beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. I still remember the day I got a phone call from my landlord about renewing my lease. I used to dread phone calls. The pressure of listening without seeing someone's face made it harder. But this time I didn't freeze. I listened, asked questions, and even made a joke about how fast the year had gone. After I hung up, I sat down and cried, but not from frustration. from pride. That phone call was a symbol, not of mastery, but of freedom. I was no longer trapped by fear. I could speak for myself, stand up for myself, laugh, share, live. That's when I started helping others. I volunteered to mentor new immigrants at the community center. I met people who were just starting their English journey, nervous, quiet, unsure, and I saw myself in them. I shared my story, my methods, my mistakes. I told them, it's okay to be scared. Just don't let fear stop you. And when they told me, but my English is not perfect, I smiled and said, mine isn't either. And that's never stopped me. That was the biggest truth I had learned. Progress is not perfection. It never was. It never needed to be. Fluency is not just about language. It's about courage, persistence, belief. It's about saying hello when you're scared. About walking into a room where you don't know anyone and still taking a seat. About asking for help when you don't have the right words, but trying anyway. About messing up and laughing at yourself, then trying again. And when you do that enough, you begin to understand. You are fluent. Fluent in effort. Fluent in bravery. Fluent in life. So now when people ask me, are you fluent in English? I smile and say, I'm fluent in making progress. And that's something no one can take away from me. Because I've earned every word, every sentence, every moment of understanding. I didn't wake up one day and become confident. I built that confidence one whisper, one mirror talk, one cartoon, one book club meeting at a time. And even today, I'm still learning, still growing, still taking steps, but I no longer wait for perfection because I've already found something better. I've found my voice. Looking back now, I can barely believe how far I've come. There were nights I cried myself to sleep because I couldn't say what I was thinking. There were mornings I woke up wondering if I'd ever feel at home in a country where even the small talk felt like a test I was doomed to fail. But here I am. I don't have perfect grammar. I still have an accent. And sometimes, yes, I have to pause and find the right word. But I'm not afraid to speak anymore. That's the real win. Learning English didn't just give me a language. It gave me back my life, my confidence, my ability to connect, to belong, to be seen. For the longest time, I thought my voice was broken. But the truth is, it was never broken. It was just hidden under fear, buried under shame, waiting for permission to rise. And the moment I stopped chasing perfection, that voice finally came through. If you're listening to this and you feel stuck, if your mouth won't move, if your brain freezes, if your accent makes you feel small, I want you to know this. You are not alone. Your struggle is real, but so is your strength. You don't need fancy words to be understood. You don't need to sound American to be accepted. You just need to keep going. Talk to your mirror. Whisper to your TV. Join that club. Make that mistake. Say the wrong word, then laugh and try again. Because fluency is not a finish line. It's a journey. And every time you show up, even when your voice shakes, you're already winning. I'm Eva. I learned to speak English, but more importantly, I learned to speak without fear. And if I can do it, so can you.